June 15, 1389. A field outside Pristina, in what is now Kosovo. Two empires collide. Tens of thousands of men. Horses. Steel. By nightfall, both commanding leaders are dead. One of them is Sultan Murad I, ruler of the Ottoman Empire, conqueror of the Balkans, father of an empire that will one day stretch from Vienna's gates to the Persian Gulf. He will never leave this field alive. Murad I is the only Ottoman Sultan in over 600 years of imperial history to die on an active battlefield. Not from illness. Not from old age. Not from a palace coup. Killed, in the middle of his own camp, on the day of his greatest battle. This is the story of the Battle of Kosovo. A battle so violent, so consequential, that its date, June 15th on the old calendar, June 28th today, became a national holy day for an entire people, for 6 centuries afterward. It is a story with a Serbian prince who chose death over surrender. A knight who may have walked into the Sultan's tent as a defector, and left him dying. And a new Sultan who, within hours of his father's death, ordered the killing of his own brother, starting a practice of royal fratricide that would define the Ottoman throne for the next 250 years. Historians still argue about who actually won this battle. But everyone agrees on this. After Kosovo, the Balkans were never the same. Serbia's medieval state was broken. The Ottoman Empire tightened its grip on southeastern Europe. And one single afternoon became the most mythologized day in Serbian history. Before we go further, a warning. Parts of this story come to us wrapped in legend, added by poets and priests centuries after the fact. We will tell you what's documented history, and we will clearly tell you what's legend. No blending. No guessing dressed up as fact. This is the Battle of Kosovo, 1389. Stay with us. By the late 1300s, the Ottoman Turks were no longer a minor frontier power in Anatolia. Under Sultan Murad I, who had ruled since 1362, they had crossed into Europe and were swallowing Byzantine and Balkan territory piece by piece. Murad's forces had already taken Adrianople, modern Edirne, and made it an Ottoman capital in Europe. Bulgarian rulers had been forced into vassalage. Byzantine emperors themselves paid tribute. The Ottomans were no longer raiders. They were becoming an empire. Serbia, once a powerful medieval kingdom under Tsar Stefan Dusan, had fractured after his death in 1355. What remained was a patchwork of rival Serbian lords, no longer one kingdom, but a loose collection of principalities. One of those lords was Prince Lazar Hrebeljanović. He controlled Moravian Serbia, one of the strongest of the surviving Serbian territories, and he had steadily worked to bring other regional lords under a common front against the advancing Ottomans. In the spring of 1389, Murad I marched his army north from Ottoman-held Bulgaria toward Kosovo, a strategic plain that controlled key roads through the Balkans. Lazar assembled a coalition to meet him. His own Serbian troops formed the core. He was joined by forces under Vuk Branković, a powerful Serbian nobleman who controlled Kosovo and northern Macedonia, and by a contingent sent by Tvrtko I, king of Bosnia, commanded by the Bosnian voivode Vlatko Vuković. Numbers from medieval chronicles are unreliable and often exaggerated on both sides. What historians can say with more confidence is that both armies were large for the period, likely in the range of several tens of thousands each, and that this was one of the largest engagements fought in the Balkans in the 14th century. Murad brought his own sons into the campaign. Bayezid, his elder son, commanded one wing of the Ottoman army. Jakub, his younger son, commanded another. The armies met at Kosovo Polj, the Field of Blackbirds, on June 15, 1389, by the Julian calendar then in use. Near contemporary sources, including Ottoman court chronicles and Byzantine and Raguzin, Dubrovnik records written within decades of the battle, describe a brutal, close-fought engagement. Cavalry charges. Heavy losses on both sides. The fighting lasted for hours. And in the middle of this chaos, something happened that no other Ottoman battle would ever produce again. The Sultan himself was killed. Here is what the earliest sources agree on. Sultan Murad I died during or immediately after the battle, killed by a Serbian nobleman who reached him personally, either during the fighting or by gaining access to the Sultan's camp. The nobleman's name, as it comes down to us through tradition, was Miloš Obilić. Now, here is where fact and legend separate. Later Serbian epic poetry, composed and elaborated over the following centuries, turned this into a dramatic tale. Obilic accused of disloyalty at a banquet the night before the battle, swearing to prove himself, then pretending to defect to the Ottoman camp, kneeling before Murad as if to pledge allegiance, and stabbing him with a concealed dagger before being cut down by the Sultan's guard. What we can actually verify from sources close to the events, including the Ottoman chronicler tradition and Western European accounts written soon after, is narrower but still remarkable. A Serbian knight did kill Murad I at Kosovo, whether by infiltrating the Sultan's tent, or by reaching him in the field during combat. The exact staging of the assassination, the banquet, the feigned defection, comes from poetry, not from 14th or early 15th century chronicles. What is not in dispute is the outcome. Murad I, ruler of the Ottoman Empire for 27 years, was dead, the only Ottoman sultan in the 6th century history of the empire to die on an active battlefield. With his father dead, Bayezid, his elder son, present on the field, moved immediately to secure power. He gave the order to have his younger brother Yakub strangled, that same day, on the same battlefield. Yakub had also commanded troops in the battle and posed the only immediate rival claim to the throne. This is documented in Ottoman historical tradition as the first instance of royal fratricide at the founding of a new Ottoman reign, a practice that later sultans, most notoriously Mehmed II and his successors, would formalize into actual law by the late 15th century, killing brothers on accession to prevent civil war. Bayezid I was now sultan, and he still had a battle to finish. On the Serbian side, Prince Lazar was captured by Ottoman forces during or shortly after the fighting. He was beheaded, according to the historical record, reportedly as a reprisal for Murad's death, on the orders of the new Ottoman command. 2 supreme commanders. Both dead within the same day, on the same field. For centuries, Kosovo was remembered, especially in Serbian tradition, as a heroic tragic defeat, the day Serbia's independence effectively died. But modern historians point out something more complicated. Ottoman forces reportedly suffered such heavy losses that Bayezid withdrew his army from Kosovo rather than press the advance immediately. Serbian principalities, including Lazar's own successors, did not fall under direct Ottoman rule the next day. Some retained a degree of autonomy as vassals for years afterward. So the honest answer is, Kosovo was less a clean Ottoman battlefield victory and more a mutually devastating clash that left Serbia's leadership shattered and the Ottomans without their sultan. But strategically, it opened the door for total Ottoman dominance of the Balkans within the following decades. Murad I's remains were treated in a way few realize. According to Ottoman tradition, his internal organs were buried near the battlefield itself, at a site in Kosovo that Ottomans came to call Meshti Hudavendigar, the shrine of the sovereign. A turb or tomb shrine was later built there and still stands today, near Pristina. His body was carried back to Bursa, in Anatolia, the early Ottoman capital, and buried there in a separate tomb. The irony, the Sultan who died conquering the Balkans has part of his remains permanently resting inside them, a physical marker of empire, in the same soil where he fell. The killing of Yakub on the day of Kosovo wasn't a one-time act of political convenience. It set a precedent. Later Ottoman sultans didn't hide this practice, they legalized it. Sultan Mehmed II, in the 15th century, issued a law explicitly permitting a new sultan to execute his brothers for the order of the world, to prevent succession wars. Kosovo, in that sense, marks something bigger than a single battle. It marks the birth of one of the most ruthless succession systems in imperial history, a direct line from the death of one sultan on a Balkan field to a law that would cost the lives of dozens of Ottoman princes over the following 2 centuries. For Serbia, Kosovo became something more than history. It became identity. Serbian Orthodox tradition folded the battle into religious memory. Lazar was venerated as a martyr, and the day of the battle, June 15th on the old calendar, became Vidovdan, St. Vitus Day, one of the most significant dates on the Serbian national and religious calendar. Centuries later, 19th century Serbian epic poetry, collected and popularized by figures like Vuk Karadžić, built an entire cultural mythology around Kosovo, the Kosovo Covenant, the idea of choosing a heavenly kingdom over an earthly one, Lazar's supposed choice of honorable death over surrender, and Miloš Obilic's assassination of the Sultan as the ultimate act of loyalty and sacrifice. Legend, clearly marked, much of this, the specific dialogue, the banquet scene, the supernatural elements in some poems, is 19th century and earlier oral epic tradition, not eyewitness history. But the emotional and national weight it carried was, and remains, entirely real. That weight had real, modern consequences. In 1989, on the 600th anniversary of the battle, Serbian leader Slobodan Milošević delivered a speech at Gazimestan, the site near the battlefield, invoking Kosovo directly amid rising Yugoslav nationalism, a speech historians widely cite as a marker of the tensions that preceded the wars of Yugoslavia's breakup in the 1990s. A battle fought in 1389 was still shaping political rhetoric and real political violence 600 years later. Step back, and Kosovo tells us something about how empires actually fall and rise. It wasn't one battle that ended Serbian independence. Serbian principalities lingered as Ottoman vassals for decades after 1389. The final fall of Serbian territory came gradually, culminating with the fall of Smederevo in 1459, 70 years later. And it wasn't one battle that made the Ottoman Empire either. Murad I died in the field, an enormous shock for any 14th century state, and yet the empire didn't collapse. Bayezid simply took the throne, eliminated his rival, and kept expanding. Within a decade, he would go on to besiege Constantinople itself and crush a crusading army at Nicopolis in 1396. That's the real historical lesson of Kosovo. Institutions can survive the death of even their most powerful leader, if the succession machinery, however brutal, is already in place. Murad I's death should have been a crisis. Instead, it became a footnote to Ottoman expansion, while for Serbia, the same battle became the defining wound of national memory for 6 centuries. One battlefield. One assassinated sultan, the only one in Ottoman history to die this way. One executed prince. One act of fratricide that reshaped an empire's laws. And one single day in June that 2 nations still remember completely differently, 637 years later. This has been the Battle of Kosovo, 1389.